Much for having me. Again, my name is Loretta Bosing. I'm the founder of Unite for Safe Medications. I'm a patient advocate and a mother of a child whose life relies on medications every 12 hours after he received a liver transplant from a 3-year-old little girl. I'm here today not because I'm making a penny to be here, but I'm here today because I care so much about the rapidly declining state of pharmacy, and maybe if I can get the attention of our legislators, then maybe I can save Oklahomans and other patients and parents, such as myself, to not have to see their children endure the same pain and suffering that I've had to see my own child go through. I started my advocacy after being forced to mail-order pharmacy and finding out the hard way that mail-order pharmacy is very loosely regulated. That led me to uncovering PBMs and the many ways that PBMs are destroying our pharmaceutical care in America. Not long after my son received a liver transplant, I decided to try mail-order pharmacy. They shipped his medications on a 102-degree day. They were liquid oral medications, and I was concerned about the outside temperatures, but I now know that the trucks and mailboxes can reach 120 to 170 degrees. But no one warns patients that their lives can be at risk when medication is stored in these temperatures. Meds, such as even like blood pressure medications, birth control, can not only lose potency, but can also become toxic when stored in extreme temperatures. A couple weeks after I gave my son the medication, I would find out that my son would be in liver transplant rejection. As I had to see my son scream and cry as they were trying to insert the PICC line with multiple nurses holding him down, I thought about the temperatures of that medication and how hot that bottle was. And I wondered if his rejection wasn't due to the improper shipping. I vowed again that I would never use mail-order pharmacy unless I could prove that it was safe. So I'll never forget the day that I went to fill my son's medications. I was told that I would no longer be able to fill the medications at the pharmacy that I trusted with his life. I remember I broke down in tears at the counter. We didn't have enough pills to wait on mail-order pharmacy, and I was terrified after what happened before. I was shocked when the pharmacist told us the reason for the denial. The denial came across as this was an inappropriate place to fill my son's prescriptions. I argue that the hospital pharmacy was the most appropriate place. It was a pediatric hospital pharmacy. They worked closely with my son's physicians, and I could get all of his medications in one place without risking his life with delays or improper temperature control. But I had no choice other than trust CVS Special Pharmacy. They promised they would ship his medications correctly. His medications arrived again on a hot day. His labs went up again, and I automatically began my investigation. The mail-order pharmacy would eventually admit that his medication, so this is CVS Specialty Mail-Order Pharmacy, they admitted that his medication should not exceed temperatures above 86 degrees or freeze, but they reassured me they would use extra bubble wrap during the extreme temperatures and freezing months. They even offered to ship the medications to the local pharmacy, but they would be shipped the same exact way. How was that any better? Another pharmacist said, you know what, I will allow you to drive 260 miles one way if I'm going to drive to the nearest CVS Specialty Pharmacy. And keep in mind that this medication is readily available for a $50 cash price 5 minutes away from my home. I called the FDA and I shared the recording with NBC in that recently published investigative report. The FDA employee would tell me that they receive calls like mine in the middle of every summer and every winter, but the FDA doesn't regulate mail-order pharmacy. My doctor submitted a pill for us to use the hospital pharmacy, a pill denied. CVS even lied to the employer and said that it was safe to put his medications in the temperature extremes. So CVS would also blame USP, which the FDA often refers to when they write guidelines relating to temperature. USP, I received written response for the person who actually helps write those guidelines. They do not support medications being shipped outside of the manufacturer's proven safe temperature ranges as written on the label. I filed a complaint at that time because I knew someone wasn't telling me the truth. Filed a complaint with the Department of Insurance. It will land on the U.S. Department of Labor's desk, which also, as mentioned in that article, it's towards the back, that the U.S. Department of Labor, in a recording, said that they too get complaints like mine frequently. as they let me know that I'm not the only one, but that although it's unethical and although it's unfair, it's not illegal. PICMA and PBMs surely don't tell our employers about the massive number of complaints. I'm a rare lucky one. I no longer am forced to the mail order pharmacy, no longer forced to abuse, neglect my child, and risk his life. Media was the only way that I would regain safe access to my child's medications. I now use a local independent pharmacy. They hand deliver my child's medications at a scheduled time in a temperature-controlled vehicle. Now that's the safest way for me to receive my child's medications. Started a petition. It has 176,000 supporters. Thousands of those are from Oklahomans here. And it's to stop the forcing of mail order pharmacy, but patients quickly taught me about the abuse and neglect that was also happening at corporate retail pharmacies. Right now here in Oklahoma, I spoke to someone this morning who confirmed that there are retail pharmacies here, CVS retail pharmacies is days behind on filling prescriptions. And people are forced to go to these pharmacies. So what would happen to me if I delayed my son's medications for days? With mail order pharmacies, some of these patients are going days without medications, including transplant patients. What would happen to me if I stored my son's medications in 120 to 170 degrees, knowing his life would be at risk? I would lose my child, or my children, and I'd be labeled a neglectful and abusive mom. But PBMs and their mail order pharmacies, their corporate pharmacies, they do this to patients every day, and they're rewarded with more contracts and more patients like my son to abuse and neglect. We cry out for help to end the suffering and pain, but we often only hear that their lives have to be risked for the soaring billion-dollar profits of the insurance and PBM industry. Since when did we turn our head to the abuse and neglect of our children and patients for just the right dollar amount in America? Now, I know they're going to come up behind me and they're going to say, oh, that's such a rare occurrence, but the truth, it's easy to find. The truth is there's few people brave enough like me to speak because of their influence. Often when I get patients to share their stories with media, they have to speak anonymously because they fear retaliation from their employers, from the insurance company, from the one pharmacy that they're allowed to use. But if you just look at the Better Business Bureau, many of these pharmacies have a 1-star rating, and many of those ratings will start with a review such as, I would give 0 stars if I could. And many of the Consumer Reports ratings also say the same. In fact, Consumer Reports recently published an article that said the complaints with PBMs and their pharmacies were increasing. The major complaints were patients not getting medications on time and the wrong medications received. These are not just errors. These are human lives at risk. Pharmacists of every type are in absolute crisis because of PBM greed. In Oklahoma, as many of you know, a CVS pharmacy was cited for having a 22% error rate. The issue is understaffing. Keep in mind, that was happening prior to the pandemic. Would you be okay with allowing taxpayer dollars to pay for a surgeon with a 22% error rate? Who here today would want to use that surgeon? A trusted pharmacist is as critical as selecting a heart surgeon. Sadly, we have somehow made it a norm to allow this abuse and neglect of patients in America, as we must ensure corporate profits before patient safety. Even if your child only has to get an antibiotic at one of these pharmacies, a 22% error rate, there's a cost for such poor quality care. Some pharmacists at the chain pharmacies, spoke to one this morning, have just left because they just can't take the weight of having medication errors and to offer the poor treatment. Some say that they find it very difficult to sleep at night. They met their CarePass quota, a quota that measures whether or not they've sold enough CVS membership discount cards that boosts profits for CVS, but they just don't know if they've filled medications properly. Then you have other champions like Blood to Know in Oklahoma. She started the hashtag Pizza's Not Working to raise awareness about the unsafe working conditions that's not only risking patients' lives, but pharmacists' lives, and it's quickly deteriorating our pharmaceutical care across America. I've seen independent pharmacists almost in tears, and some have said, look, I don't want to get rich. I just want to be able to serve my community. But some have sadly had to close their doors and watch their patients go to these patients where they know, or to these pharmacies where they know their patients are not going to be served well. So I'm going to conclude in saying that when I told my husband's employer that I would be here to advocate for patient choice, my husband's employer is one of the wealthiest employers in our nation. They tell me, good. They support patient choice of pharmacy because patient choice of pharmacy lowers healthcare costs, but their hands must feel tied to these insurance companies in some way. And despite their claims, PICMA and PBMs, they're not improving conditions for patients. They're not improving conditions for their pharmacists. They're not improving pharmaceutical care for our communities. They're only improving their profits. And this is a crisis. So I want to thank those of you who are actively working on legislation to resolve these issues and truly save lives. To hear, the patients' voices, the caregivers, our pharmacists, our employers, taxpayers, and those who are working hard to put the state of pharmaceutical care back in the hands of our communities. Save our pharmacies, save our pharmaceutical care, save the lives of our patients, our children, your children. Let's leave for them a better state of pharmaceutical care. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your story. I want to ask you, you kind of, I think you went into it. So with your son, how did you arrange that with your local pharmacist delivering it to you? How did you get around it again?
So it took the media. The only way, I had made over 40 calls begging for options to use our local pharmacy. They weren't going to budge. I cried almost every time I would call, like, please, they're not going to, they're lying. I know it. I have proof, there was just no way around it. By that time, I had already connected with a lot of patients across our nation, and I knew I wasn't the only one, and so many just felt absolutely powerless, and I could not allow myself to be that mom and to have to watch that, so I got special treatment.
Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, it's not right.
It's not.
Should be a standard.
Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming out today and telling that story. It's a story we try to tell. It's a lot more impactful coming from the mom. So that was great. I hope everybody's listening. For those that aren't here today, I hope that they will log in and listen, because it does matter. Lives matter, and when you're messing with, we'll go through the expense of a liver transplant, but we won't spend, say it's an extra 1% to make sure the drugs work effectively.
You're right.
Seems silly, right?
Yeah.
One number you threw around a couple times was 22% error rate. Can you tell me what you're referring to?
That was in the New York Times article where CVS Pharmacy had been cited by the State Board of Pharmacy for having a 22% error rate.
And was that a CVS pharmacy in Oklahoma?
That was CVS, yes.
That was a CVS pharmacy. So this does hit close to home. This is happening here in Oklahoma. This isn't something that only happens in big cities. That is actually a small town, semi-small town CVS pharmacy that is so understaffed. They had a 22% error rate, and that's just the one the state board has brought in front of them, gone through the numbers, and imposed fines on. There's a lot more pharmacies that they haven't looked at. So, again, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For coming.
Thank you.
Chairman Sneed.
Thank you, Chairman McIntyre. So, you obviously you're passionate. You're here today. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for that. How far did you drive?
7 hours. About 7 hours to be here, and I'm here because it is very important to me. Once you uncover something, so many patients suffering. If you go through and you read those reviews, there are patients in pain. There was a cancer patient who was a child pediatric cancer patient, and she was going without medication several times by CVS Specialty Pharmacy when they could not deliver in time. And the patients are just, or the parents are just pleading with the representative to get involved to help them. And, this is a medication they would be able to get at their local pharmacy the same day. It was an expensive medication though, so it wasn't her chemo, it was like a maintenance medication, but they would not budge on letting them use the local pharmacy. So it's happening a lot everywhere. But once you uncover something that is risking the lives of so many Americans, how do you turn away? It's hard for me to sleep at night when there's patients looking to me to help them to somehow get their medications for the day. And no matter what I do, I can't help. The only thing I can hope is that maybe if we can get their stories shared in media, maybe that'll be enough. And it's sad that that's what it's come to.
So with anti-rejection meds and things of that nature, I know you have to be on a very strict schedule with your son, right? And
Yes.
how long did it take you to be able to, actually get that at your local pharmacy versus the mail order?
Same day. I mean, I can pick it up the same day.
No, I mean, how long did it take you to get it switched from
Oh,
mail?
switched?
Yeah, from mail order over to being able to go pick it up at your local
Well, after
pharmacy?
his liver enzymes elevated again, I was fierce. I called them almost every day. It took me about 2 months to get switched. In the meantime, they kept giving me one-time overrides. And that last time they had told me, this is only a one-time override. You're not supposed to get this multiple times, but I refused. I couldn't, after knowing what I know, chemo medications are already toxic. I don't want to improperly store my child's medications. I actually recorded my UPS driver saying that the UPS trucks on a 90-degree day is so hot that he cannot breathe in the back. They're mandated to keep the doors closed. And when I told him that my son's medications were back there in a bag, he was heartbroken with me, because he knew how risky it would be.
Well, bless you for fighting for your son like that. We appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome. I just hope that I can help change this.
Thank you, Loretta. I hope you'll keep fighting. And just for the record, I actually worked at a mail order pharmacy in 1998.
Neat.
And I was on the emergency team. I was one of those people doing all those emergency one-time authorizations. And anyway, interesting to hear from the other side.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. You have a question?
Just real quick, representatives, in your folder are the news articles about all this that you can read in detail. And we'll also be emailing those out, or the Pharmacists Association will email those out to all representatives and senators. So you'll have them.
Well, again, thank you for driving 7 hours to be here down in God's country. We appreciate you for coming down here, and have a safe trip home. And again, thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you all for all you do.
Well,